The job posting said $85,000. I have the screenshot. I printed it out and framed it on my wall like a trophy when I got hired. But when I opened my first paycheck 6 weeks into the job, I genuinely thought there had been a banking error because the math didn't add up to 85,000. It added up to 52. And what happened when I brought it up to HR? They looked me dead in the eyes and said 4 words that made my blood run cold.
Let me take you back to the beginning because I need you to understand how calculated this whole thing was. I'd been job hunting for almost 4 months after getting laid off from my previous company, startup that ran out of funding overnight, and classic story. I was getting desperate, burning through my savings when I saw the posting on LinkedIn. Senior Marketing Analyst at Vertex Solutions. Salary range listed clearly, $80,000 to $90,000. Full benefits, hybrid schedule. The job description was exactly what I'd been doing for the past 6 years. It felt like someone had written it specifically for me. I applied within 10 minutes of seeing it. To my surprise, I got a call the very next day. The recruiter, a woman named Patricia, was incredibly enthusiastic. She talked about the company culture, the growth opportunities, how they were really looking for someone who could hit the ground running. I asked her about the salary range, wanting to confirm what I'd seen. "Oh, that's definitely the range for this position," she said. "We're very competitive." The interview process moved fast. First a phone screening, then a video call with the hiring manager, then an in-person meeting with the team. Everyone seemed great, professional, friendly, excited about the work they were doing. The hiring manager, a guy named Derek, even told me I was his top candidate. I was feeling good, really good. Then came the offer letter. Here's where I made my first mistake. The offer letter arrived as a PDF attachment in an email at 9:47 p.m. on a Friday night. They wanted my response by Monday morning. I was exhausted from a week of interviews and running on fumes financially. The email said, "Congratulations, we're pleased to offer you the position of Senior Marketing Analyst at a competitive salary with full benefits." I skimmed the document. I saw the title, I saw the start date, I saw something about benefits enrollment, but the actual salary, it was buried on page 4 of a 6-page document in a section called Compensation Structure that was written in the densest legal language I'd ever seen. It referenced base compensation and variable incentive targets and total rewards package valuation. I thought I understood it. I thought the base was $82,000 with a potential bonus structure on top. That seemed right. That matched the posting. I signed it. My second mistake, I never asked for a simple number. Not once during any interview did I say, "What exactly will my annual salary be?" I assumed the posting was accurate. I assumed the recruiter's confirmation meant something. I assumed the offer letter, despite its confusing language, reflected what had been advertised. You know what they say about assumptions. I started on Monday. The first few weeks were a blur of onboarding, training sessions, and trying to learn the company's systems. I was working hard, staying late, trying to prove I was worth the investment. The work itself was fine, though I noticed pretty quickly that my actual responsibilities didn't quite match the job description. The posting had emphasized strategic planning and campaign development, creative work, big picture thinking. But most of what I was doing was data entry and generating reports, grunt work, entry-level stuff. When I mentioned this to Derek, he waved it off. "Everyone starts with the fundamentals," he said. "Give it a few months." I told myself to be patient. Then payday arrived. I remember exactly where I was sitting when I opened my banking app. At my desk, eating a sad desk salad, checking to see if my direct deposit had hit. It had. $2,000. Even. I stared at the number, did the math in my head twice. Twice a month, so multiply by 24, that came out to $48,000 annually, before taxes. After taxes, it would be even less. My first thought was that there must be a mistake. Maybe they'd only processed a partial payment since I'd started mid-cycle. Maybe the system had glitched. There had to be an explanation. I pulled up my pay stub through the employee portal, and there it was, in black and white. Annual salary, $52,000. Not 85, not 82, not even close. $52,000 for a senior-level position that I had 6 years of experience for, in a major metropolitan area where rent alone would eat up half that salary. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I walked straight to HR. I didn't even finish my salad. I brought my phone with the job posting screenshot pulled up, ready to show them the obvious error. The HR representative, a woman named Gina with a permanent tight smile, listened to my explanation with an expression of practiced patience.
She asked for my employee ID, pulled up my file, looked at her screen for what felt like forever. Then she looked at me and said those 4 words. "You signed the contract." Okay, I need to stop here for a second because I'm standing in this HR office realizing I've been completely played and I genuinely don't know what I'm supposed to do. Subscribe if you think this company knowingly deceived me with that job posting. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever been in a situation where you signed something you didn't fully understand? Because I'm about to find out just how deep this rabbit hole goes. And trust me, what I discovered next made everything so much worse. I stood there in Gina's office trying to process what she'd just said. The job posting said 80 to 90,000, I said, holding up my phone. I have the screenshot right here. Gina barely glanced at it. Job postings reflect potential compensation ranges based on various factors, including experience, location, and budget availability at the time of hire. The actual offer is what's contained in your signed agreement. But the recruiter confirmed the range. She said you were competitive. Patricia is an external contractor. She doesn't set compensation. The offer letter you signed clearly stated your base salary. It was buried in legal jargon. It talked about variable incentives and total rewards packages. I thought the base was $82,000 with bonuses on top. Gina's smile didn't waver. The total rewards package, including health benefits, retirement contributions, and professional development opportunities, is valued at approximately $83,000. Your base salary is $52,000. I felt the room spin. They had technically told me the truth. They'd just hidden it under layers of corporate doublespeak designed to make $52,000 look like $83,000. The variable incentive targets were apparently theoretical bonuses that required hitting metrics that, as I would soon learn, no one in the department had ever actually achieved. This is bait and switch. This is fraud. "This is standard industry practice," Gina replied coolly. "If you have concerns about your compensation, you're welcome to discuss them with your manager during your 6-month review." 6 months. She wanted me to wait 6 months, working for $33,000 less than advertised, on the vague promise that maybe we could talk about it later. I walked out of that office in a daze. I should have quit on the spot. Looking back, I know that. But I was scared. I'd been unemployed for months. I had rent due in 2 weeks. The job market was brutal, and some terrible, desperate part of my brain was whispering that maybe if I just worked hard enough, they'd fix it. They did not fix it. Over the next 3 months, I learned exactly how Vertex Solutions operated. I wasn't the only one this had happened to. I started talking to other employees, quietly, carefully. One by one, the stories came out. Marcus in accounting had been hired for a senior financial analyst position that turned out to be basic bookkeeping for $11 per hour less than posted. Jenna in customer success had been promised a hybrid schedule and was told 2 weeks in that the policy had changed to full-time in office. David in IT had accepted a lead developer role and discovered he was the only developer with no team to lead, expected to do the work of 4 people. The pattern was always the same: attractive job posting, fast interview process, confusing offer letter, and by the time you realized what had happened, you'd already signed. I started documenting everything: screenshots of job postings, emails from recruiters, copies of offer letters from colleagues who were willing to share them. I created a folder on my personal laptop that I backed up to 3 different cloud services. I was building a case, though I didn't know yet what I was going to do with it. The breaking point came during my 3-month check-in with Derek. I'd prepared a carefully worded request for a salary adjustment. I'd gathered data on market rates for my position. I'd documented my contributions, the projects I'd completed, the results I'd delivered. I walked into that meeting with what I thought was an airtight argument. Derek listened, nodded, made sympathetic noises. Then he said, "I hear you, Marcus, and I think you're doing great work, but salary adjustments aren't really something we do outside the annual review cycle. Let's revisit this in 9 months." 9 months, on top of the 3 I'd already been there. A full year of being underpaid by $33,000 before they'd even consider discussing it. "Derek," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "the job was advertised at $85,000. I have the posting." He looked at me with something that might have been pity. Job postings are created by HR and recruiting. I don't have any control over that. The budget for this role was always $52,000. Then why was it posted at $85,000? He shrugged. You'd have to ask them, but between you and me, those ranges are more like aspirational. They help us attract top talent. Attract top talent that we then underpay by 40%. I went home that night and started applying for other jobs, but I also did something else. I started researching. It took me 3 weeks to find what I was looking for. Buried in my state labor code, there was a relatively new law that had been passed just 2 years ago. It required employers to provide salary ranges in job postings that accurately reflected what they intended to pay. Violations could result in fines and, more importantly, could be reported to the state labor board. I also found a local attorney who specialized in employment law. Her name was Sandra Chen, and when I showed her my documentation, her eyes lit up. This is textbook bait and switch, and you're not the only one. If we can get others to come forward, this becomes a class action. I spent the next month quietly reaching out to current and former Vertex employees. I found 14 people willing to share their stories. 14 people who had been systematically deceived about their compensation, their job duties, or their working conditions. Sandra filed the complaint on a Tuesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, I'd been called into a meeting with Gina from HR and someone I'd never seen before from the legal department. They informed me that my position was being restructured and I was being offered a voluntary separation package. 2 weeks' pay, which at my actual salary amounted to about $2,000, less than I would have made in one paycheck if they'd paid me what they advertised. I declined the offer. That's unfortunate, the legal guy said, because the alternative is termination for cause. What cause? Poor performance, insubordination, take your pick. I smiled. For the first time in months, I actually smiled. Go ahead, fire me. Add retaliation to the complaint Sandra Chen filed this morning. I'm sure the state labor board will love that. The color drained from both their faces. I walked out of that meeting without a job, but I walked out on my own terms. The investigation took 8 months. During that time, I found a new job at a company that showed me exactly what my salary would be on the first phone call. No surprises, no buried clauses, just honest communication. Vertex Solutions was fined $170,000 for labor code violations. They were required to adjust the salaries of affected employees who still worked there, resulting in back pay that totaled over $200,000 across the class. And every single job posting they create now has to include exact salary figures, verified by quarterly audits. Patricia, the external recruiter, her contract was terminated. Gina from HR, quietly let go 3 months after the settlement. Derek, still there, still misleading candidates probably. Some people never change. But me, I learned something that day that I'll carry for the rest of my career. If someone won't give you a straight answer about money, they're not being coy, they're not being professional, they're hiding something. And whatever they're hiding is going to cost you. Ask the question, get the number, in writing before you sign anything. Because that competitive compensation they're promising, it might be competing against poverty wages, and the only person looking out for you is you.
Thanks for sticking with me through this one. If you've ever been burned by a bait-and-switch salary or you've got a nightmare job story of your own, drop it in the comments. I read every single one. If this video helped you or made you feel less alone, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. And if you want your story featured on this channel, send it through the link in the description. Your experience might help someone else avoid the same trap. Until next time, stay vigilant out there.